Ladies and gentlemen, today I want to take you into the hidden chambers of your own mind, the parts you avoid, the emotions you suppress, the impulses you deny. Carl Jung called this the shadow self, the version of you that you don't want the world to see, and sometimes the version you don't even want to admit exists. Jung believed that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. And that is exactly what happens when the shadow takes control. Your shadow doesn't dominate you through noise. It dominates you through silence, through the unspoken, the unhealed, the unseen. Today, we explore 9 signs your shadow self is controlling you, so you can finally reclaim your power. You overreact to small things when the shadow rules you. A small comment, a tiny inconvenience, or the slightest disappointment suddenly feels like an attack. Your emotional reaction becomes much bigger than the situation itself. Why? Because your shadow is using the present moment to express old, buried pain. The anger isn't new, it's ancient. You constantly judge others' projection is the shadow's favorite weapon. Jung said, everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. When you find yourself judging, criticizing, or disliking someone intensely, your shadow is actually pointing towards something unresolved within you. You feel drained without knowing why. A life lived in self-denial, emotional suppression, and inner conflict is exhausting. When your shadow is steering the ship, you lose energy fighting your own truth. Fatigue becomes a message. You are not living in alignment. You sabotage your own happiness. The shadow often believes you are unworthy of joy, love, or success. So when good things come, it whispers, this won't last, you don't deserve this. And without even noticing, you sabotage the very things you prayed for. You become addicted to distractions when the inner world becomes too loud. People escape into external noise, scrolling, gossip, drama, work, chaos. The shadow controls you by keeping you far away from yourself. You struggle to set boundaries if your shadow carries guilt, fear, or unworthiness. You find it impossible to say no. You become a mirror reflecting everyone's expectations, except your own. Boundaries require self-respect, and the shadow weakens your sense of identity. You repeat the same painful patterns, same relationships, same mistakes, same outcomes. This isn't coincidence, it's the unconscious replaying old wounds, hoping to resolve them through repetition. But until you meet your shadow with awareness, the cycle continues. You hide parts of yourself out of shame. The shadow thrives in secrecy. Anything you hide, your desires, your fears, your past, grows stronger in the dark. Shame becomes the lock, and the shadow becomes the jailer. You feel like you're watching your own life from the outside. When the shadow has taken over, you don't feel fully present. You feel disconnected, numb, or distant from your own choices. Life happens to you, instead of flowing through you. One of the clearest signs that your shadow self is controlling you is the intensity of your emotional reactions. When something small triggers something massive inside you, it is rarely about the moment in front of you. It is about an old wound that has never been given a voice. Carl Jung believed that the shadow speaks through emotion, especially the emotions we struggle to control. When you overreact in anger, sadness, jealousy, or fear, it is the shadow reminding you that unresolved pain still lives within. Think about the last time someone made a small comment that bothered you more than it should have. Perhaps someone disagreed with you, ignored you, or joked about something harmless. To others, it was nothing. But to you, it felt personal, sharp, and heavy. This is because the shadow stores every unprocessed experience, and when the right situation appears, it reacts not to the present, but to the entire history behind it. An overreaction is not a failure, it is a message. It tells you there is a part of you that has been silenced for too long. Maybe it is the child in you who wasn't allowed to speak. Maybe it is the version of you who felt unworthy, unseen, or unsafe. The shadow carries all these emotional memories, and when ignored, it erupts through exaggerated responses. The stronger the reaction, the deeper the wound. But here is the truth. Emotional overreactions are an invitation. They are opportunities to pause and ask yourself, what does this feeling really belong to? Why does this moment hurt so much? In that pause, you create a doorway to self-awareness. Instead of letting the shadow control you, you begin to understand it. Jung taught that the moment you observe your shadow, you weaken its power. Once you name the emotion, once you acknowledge the pain behind it, the overreaction loses its hold. Awareness brings calm, clarity, and control. Your emotions are not your enemy. They are signals, guiding you toward the parts of yourself that need healing. When you learn to read those signals, your overreactions transform into understanding, and your shadow transforms into wisdom. Carl Jung taught that one of the shadow's most powerful mechanisms is projection, the act of seeing in others what you refuse to see in yourself. When the shadow controls you, it uses projection as a mirror, reflecting your hidden fears, insecurities, and denied qualities onto the world around you. You don't realize it, but the traits you harshly judge in others are often the very traits you haven't accepted within yourself. Think about the people who irritate you the most. Sometimes it's the loud person, the confident one, the emotional one, the irresponsible one, the opinionated one, or the one who always seems to take up space. Ask yourself, why does this bother me more than it bothers others? The answer is usually rooted in your own unacknowledged shadow. You may have once been punished for being too expressive, too needy, too bold, or too emotional, and now you reject those qualities in yourself. So when you see them in someone else, the shadow reacts. Projection happens because the unconscious cannot express itself directly. It pushes these hidden traits outward, making the world feel like it is filled with the very qualities you deny within. This is why Jung said, everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. The behavior you judge is a clue, a breadcrumb, leading you back to a part of yourself that needs healing, acceptance, or integration. The shadow also uses projection to avoid responsibility. It is easier to blame others than to confront your own flaws. Instead of acknowledging your anger, you say others are aggressive. Instead of admitting your insecurity, you call others arrogant. Instead of owning your mistakes, you highlight everyone else's shortcomings. This avoidance strengthens the shadow and makes your perception of reality distorted and emotionally charged. But projection is not a punishment, it is a teacher. When you become aware of it, something powerful happens. You begin to reclaim the parts of yourself you abandoned. You learn to look within before reacting outward. Instead of judging, you begin understanding. Instead of accusing, you begin reflecting, and instead of running from your shadow, you start integrating it. Recognizing your projections is one of the most transformative steps towards self-awareness. When you take responsibility for what shows up within you, the world stops being a battlefield and becomes a mirror one that guides you toward wholeness. One of the most unmistakable signs that your shadow self is controlling you is the repetition of painful patterns in your life. You keep experiencing the same disappointments, the same conflicts, the same heartbreaks, and the same failures, almost as if life is circling you back to the exact place you tried to escape from. But this repetition is not coincidence. It is your shadow replaying unhealed wounds, hoping you will finally confront what you once avoided. Carl Jung taught that the unconscious mind does not forget. Every emotional injury, every moment of rejection, every loss, every humiliation, every betrayal you never processed gets stored in the shadow. And unless it is brought to the surface, it silently begins to shape your choices, your relationships, and your behavior. Not consciously, but through patterns that feel strangely familiar. You may wonder, why do I always end up with the same kind of people? Or why do I sabotage my opportunities every time things start going well? These patterns are your shadow reenacting old emotional stories. If you grew up feeling unworthy, your shadow draws you into situations that reinforce unworthiness. If you once felt abandoned, you unconsciously attract relationships that recreate abandonment. If you were taught to ignore your own needs, you continually choose environments where your needs don't matter. The shadow does this not to punish you, but because it is trying to resolve what was never healed. It repeats what is unresolved, hoping you will finally see it, understand it, and break the cycle. But until you become conscious of these patterns, they control you. You think you are choosing freely, but in truth, the shadow is guiding you back to your wound. Self-sabotage is the shadow's most painful expression. You may delay your success, push away love, deny your own talents, or shrink whenever life offers you something good. This is because your inner wounds whisper, "You don't deserve this," "This is dangerous," or "This will end badly," making you unconsciously destroy what you consciously desire. The moment you recognize the pattern is the moment healing begins. Awareness breaks the cycle. When you ask yourself, "Where have I felt this before?" you start to see the connection between past pain and present choices. And once you bring that pattern into the light, the shadow can no longer control the script. Healing your wounds frees you from repetition and opens the path to a future not shaped by pain, but by possibility. When your shadow self begins to dominate your life, one of the deepest consequences is the loss of connection with your authentic self. You no longer act from who you truly are, you act from who you think you should be. This disconnect creates a constant inner conflict, a quiet tension beneath everything you do. It feels like living in two worlds at once, the world of your truth and the world of your suppression. Carl Jung believed that the authentic self is the center of wholeness, the part of you that is honest, aware, and aligned with your true nature. But the shadow forms when pieces of that self are rejected, buried, or hidden due to fear, shame, judgment, or societal expectations. Every time you silence your true feelings, disconnect from your desires, or pretend to be someone you're not, the shadow grows stronger, and slowly, the voice of the authentic self becomes harder to hear. When the shadow is in control, you begin living according to external demands rather than internal truth. You choose careers, relationships, and lifestyles not because they reflect who you are, but because they keep your shadow hidden. Your actions are shaped by fear of being judged, rejected, or exposed. This creates a life that may look stable on the outside, but feels empty, restless, or wrong on the inside. You may notice this conflict in moments when your intuition says one thing, but your behavior says another. You say yes when you want to say no. You stay silent when you want to speak, You follow a path that pleases others while abandoning the one that fulfills you. This dissonance is not random, it is the shadow pulling you away from your authentic nature. Over time, this inner conflict becomes emotional exhaustion. You feel like you are constantly fighting yourself. You question your decisions, doubt your feelings, and struggle to trust your own voice. You may even feel disconnected from life, as if you are performing rather than living. Jung described this state as losing your inner compass, but the disconnection is reversible. The moment you allow your true feelings, desires, and truths to surface, the shadow begins to loosen its grip. Reconnecting with your authentic self requires honesty, sometimes painful honesty, but it brings freedom, clarity, and inner peace. When you choose authenticity over fear, the inner conflict fades. You stop living as a fragment and begin living as a whole. Carl Jung believed that true freedom is not achieved by becoming perfect, pure, or untouched by darkness, but by becoming whole. And wholeness is impossible without facing, understanding, and integrating the shadow. When the shadow controls you, it steals your clarity, your confidence, and your sense of direction. But when you integrate it, everything changes. You gain access to strength, creativity, intuition, and authenticity that were once locked away in the dark. Integration does not mean destroying the shadow or making it disappear. It means shining light on the parts of yourself you once avoided and allowing them to become part of your conscious identity. Every fear, every insecurity, every buried emotion, and every unclaimed trait contains energy. That energy becomes a destructive force when suppressed, but a powerful inner resource when acknowledged. Most people fear the shadow because it holds unpleasant truths. But Jung taught that the shadow also holds the gold of the personality, your unrealized gifts, forgotten potential, and untapped courage. The anger you suppress may hide a powerful sense of justice. The sadness you avoid may hide deep empathy. The desire you deny may hide a calling you were born to follow. When you integrate your shadow, you reclaim these strengths. The process of integration begins with awareness. When you notice your triggers, your projections, your patterns, and your reactions, you begin to understand what the shadow is trying to tell you. Reflection, journaling, mindfulness, and honest self-inquiry become tools for illumination. Instead of running from discomfort, you learn to sit with it. Instead of blaming others, you learn to look inward. Instead of pretending, you learn to accept. As this awareness grows, something extraordinary happens. The shadow loses its power to control you. You stop reacting automatically. You stop repeating the same mistakes. You stop sabotaging your happiness. The unconscious becomes conscious, and in that moment, you take back your freedom. Integration transforms your inner world. You become more grounded, more compassionate, more self-aware. You no longer fear your own emotions because you understand them. You no longer fear your own flaws because you have embraced them. You no longer fear your past because you have learned from it, rather than running from it. When you integrate your shadow, you do not become perfect, you become whole. And that wholeness is the foundation of true personal freedom. The freedom to live honestly, love deeply, and walk through life without hiding from yourself.